This conference will now be recorded.
So in the last session, we have discussed about the trigger handler factories and how to use the trigger handler factory as part of the triggers implementation, how to implement some complex functionalities also by making the trigger as a logic-less trigger, how to implement that functionality we have discussed practically in the last session. So today we'll see the trigger best practices. What are the various best practices that we need to use as part of triggers and the trigger order of execution? These two are both are theoretical topics. These are not practical. These are theoretical topics. So now it's a common question in every interview. What are the various best practices that you are following upon implementing the triggers? Upon implementing the triggers, what are the various best practices that we need to follow? You know, these are not new. These are already you are aware of. From the beginning of the development, if we're discussing some best practices, all those best practices we have to include as part of these best practices of the now. So now as part of this trigger best practices, we are having the various best practices we used to follow. The first one, you know that these are not new. Already every point we have discussed, but we are going to be consolidating all the points at one place. That's it. Now, so the first one is as part of the trigger best practices, the first best practice is trigger should be always a bulkified trigger. Trigger should be always a bulkified trigger. That means whatever the trigger that we have prepared, the trigger is not only handling the processing of one record, the trigger can able to process multiple records also. That means once a trigger has been filed, then it can able to process multiple records also. So whenever I'm inserting multiple records, whenever I'm updating multiple records, whenever I'm deleting multiple records, or it may be one record also, whatever, anything. Upon performing the operations on these records, it may be one record, it may be multiple records also. The trigger should fire only once. The trigger should fire only once. Only one time a trigger has to be get fired, and then it has to do the required processing inside. Now, so in this case here, whenever if you want to implement the multiplication of the trigger, what we need to do? We need to use a for. Okay, we need to use the for loop and then required context variables. As part of trigger, we are using the various context variables. So which will be holding all the records, okay, which you are going to be processing. So we have to use the trigger context variables, and along with that, we have to use the for loop in order to iterate those records from the trigger context, and then we can perform the required business logic on that record, each and every record one by one. If all the records have been processed successfully, then only the record should be acceptable inside the object. If any of the operation has been failed, then it will be rolling back the complete transaction. So that we have implemented that trigger bulkification with the help of using the for loop, and along with that we are using this trigger context variables. Next, the second best practice is whenever we are performing some operations on based on some collection, based on some input values, always we have to verify the null pointer exceptions. Always we have to add a condition to check the null pointer exception. Like see, so now whenever I'm going to be converting the lead record also, I'm verifying this condition. If the collection is empty or not. If the collection is empty, then nothing to do. If the collection is not empty, then only we can able to convert the lead records. And then here also we are verifying. If the lead records state when you do verification, can do some data, verifying the conditions. So suppose if the value is empty, if the collection is empty, if the collection is null, then no need to perform that operation because it will raise the null pointer exceptions. So to avoid these kind of null pointer exceptions, we are going to be using the help of. So we are using the help of the proper conditions inside this. And the next one, always use the try and catch blocks to handle the exceptions. That means whenever we are going to be writing the code, so upon executing the code, sometimes it may be raising some exceptions also. To handle those exceptions, always we have to use the try and catch blocks. We'll see that exception handling mechanism concept over there. Next, the next one is the trigger events. So now differentiate the events, okay, with a separate code blocks to avoid the usage of trigger.new and the trigger.old. So that means what? Whenever we are going to be writing the business logic, so multiple events business logic we are writing within the trigger itself. Multiple events business logic we are writing within the trigger itself. So at the time, which piece of code has to be executed on what event, we can differentiate by using the various code blocks. By using the trigger context variables, we are going to be segregating the business logic. Like this is the piece of code, please execute on before insert event. This is the piece of code which has to be executed on after insert event. This is the piece of code which has to be executed on before a delete event. Like that, we are going to be segregating the code blocks by using the proper trigger context variables, and along with that, based on that event, we are using the help of trigger.new and the trigger.old context variables. We are using this trigger.new and the trigger.old context variables according to the business requirement in this case. Because so now which context variable is available in which event, that. Because that already we have discussed, trigger.new is available in insert operation and then update operation. Trigger.old is available in update operation and delete operation. Like that here, which context variable is available in which event, so that here we have to utilize the proper utilization of this trigger.new and trigger.old based on the events. And the next one, the fifth one is, that these are the common things already we are aware of. Don't use any DML operations inside the funnel. Why? Because Salesforce has given the limitation to us as part of ground limits that we can able to use maximum of 150 DML statements per transaction. Suppose if I am using this DML statements inside that for loop, if the for loop is repeating for up to 150 times, then fine, no problem. If that for loop is repeating for more number of times, then automatically it will hit the ground limit, which is going to be aborting your transaction, which will roll back your transaction. So in this case, don't use the DML statements inside the for loop, and so that always you have to follow the bulkification process. How can we implement? Add them to the list collection and then perform the operations on that collection of records outside the for loop. So always follow the bulkification process. Upon performing the DML operation, don't write any DML statements inside the for loop. Okay, always we have to follow the bulkification process, so that add them to a collection, and then once our records has been added to the collection, then we can perform the operations on the collection of records in one shot outside this for loop. This is the process we have to follow. And next one, this is also the common thing. So now don't use any SOQL queries and SOSL queries inside the for loop. Why? Because here also we are having some limitations. Okay, here also we are having some limitations. So that means what is the limitations over here? Whenever we are going to be using this SOQL queries inside the for loop, so now in a single transaction we can use maximum of 100 SOQL queries. Salesforce has given the limitation that we can use maximum of 100 SOQL queries within a single transaction, not more than that. So if the for loop is repeating for more number of times, it will hit the ground limit, which is going to be aborting your transaction. So for that reason, don't use any SOQL queries inside the for loop. Next, SOSL queries. So now as part of the transaction, in a transaction, we can use maximum of 20 SOSL queries, not more than that. That is a limitation given by Salesforce. So within a single transaction, we can use maximum of 20 SOSL queries. Suppose if you are using more than 20 SOSL queries inside the transaction, Salesforce is going to be hitting the local limit, getting an exception. Too many SOSL queries, okay, 21 exception will be getting arised. So to avoid such kind of problems, don't write any SOSL queries inside the for loop. Always we have to write that SOQL queries or SOSL queries outside the for loop, so that we can able to avoid that the Gonda limit exceptions. Now, next, after that, read the test classes point over here. We'll see the test classes point in the next sessions. Now, because during the test classes, we'll see this concept over. So now in this case, the next one is avoid the recurrence. Nothing but this is the recursive trigger problem. Okay, this is the recursive trigger problem. So what do you mean by recursive trigger problem? Yesterday we have discussed. Okay, yesterday we have discussed it. Recursive trigger problem. Now let me show you. Recursive trigger problem. See, yesterday we have implemented one functionality where I would like to synchronize the data between hiring manager object and the recruiter object. Where as soon as whenever I'm going to be inserting the hiring manager record, immediately now a new record has to be created inside my recruiter object also. Immediately it has to create a recruiter record inside the recruiter object also. Up to this is fine. And then second one is I ask you to implement. Okay, I've given some assignment also to you as part of this. And once the hiring manager record has been updated successfully, immediately it has to update that respective recruiter record inside this recruiter object, because hiring manager object is linked with that recruiter record. Okay, because it is having a relationship field is available. So whenever I'm creating a new hiring manager record, immediately one recruiter record also will be getting created. So if we did any changes inside my hiring manager record, immediately the same changes has to be get reflected back to that related recruiter record also. Now, so after that, so once the recruiter record has been modified, suppose in future, if I'm changing this recruiter record value, then immediately it has to synchronize these values into that the hiring manager also. This is the functionality which I asked you to implement. And then I did most of the functionality, 70% of the code I have implemented. So now after insert I have implemented, after update also I have done. And then I ask you to implement that after update of that, the recruiter record. Now, so in this case, what will happen? Now let me explain. Okay, in this case, what will happen? Now let me explain. So in this case, once the hiring manager record has been getting created, then immediately a related recruiter record will be getting created. Immediately a related recruiter record has been created. Fine. Now, suppose for example, I am modifying this value to a hiring manager record value, okay, location from Bangalore to some Mumbai. Whenever I'm changing this value, once the record value has been updated, immediately my after update trigger will fire and it is going to be updating this respective recruiter record. Immediately, recruiter record will be getting updated. So once the recruiter record has been updated, on this subject there is a trigger is available on the after update. So this trigger will fire. Because this trigger will fire. Once the recruiter record has been updated, what it will do? It is going to be updating that hiring manager record. It is updating that hiring manager. That means once the record has been updated, then it is going to be updating that hiring manager. So now once the hiring manager has been updated, then again it is going to be updating that recruiter record. If the recruiter record has been updated, again it is going to be updating that hiring manager. If the hiring manager is updated, again it is updating that recruiter. If the recruiter is updated, again it is updating the hiring manager. Nothing but this will be going into that recursive process, nothing but circular process. This kind of problem is called as a recursive trigger problem. These are called as recursive triggers. That's what here I have given this assignment yesterday. This is the recursive trigger problem. So that means what? Now one trigger is invoking the another one. So now once the hiring manager record has been updated, immediately this trigger will fire. It is updating the recruiter. Once the recruiter record has been updated, there is a trigger is available. It is firing automatically. So this trigger will be updating the hiring manager. This trigger is updating the recruiter. So both will be keep on executing continuously in the circular process. This kind of problem is called as recursive trigger problem inside your Salesforce instance. Always we have to avoid this kind of recursive trigger problem with the help of by maintaining the Boolean variables. This can be implemented with the help of the static Boolean variables. That means what? We have to prepare one separate class. We have to prepare one separate class over. In this class, we have to maintain a Boolean variable. Okay, we have to maintain a Boolean variable like as a switch variable. Okay, like as a switch, which is used to identify whether we have obtained updated or not. So now here in this case, what needs to be done? Now, in this case, once a trigger has been getting fired, then immediately, okay, I would like to verify whether this record is already updated or not. So I would like to check if the value is false. By default, this value will be false. Now I would like to verify whether this record is updated or not. If the value is false, then I would like to update it over. Once the record has been getting updated, then I want to make this a value to true. That means I'm indicating that here. That means I'm indicating that. So I have updated that. Don't come back over here. I'm going to be updating this. Suppose in future, if you did any modifications over here, then it will be verifying this one. Okay, then it will verify. In the second case, what happened? Whenever you were updating that, one more transaction will get started. Then it will verify that here the value will be false. If the value is false or not, nothing but if it is not updated back to that hiring manager, then it will be updating that value. Once the value has been updated, it will set this value to true. So that here we are done with that. So in this case, what will happen? Once the record has been updated, then this trigger will fire. This trigger will verify whether this value is false or not. No, this is true. So that means here no need to go back to this one again. So that we are going to maintaining a static Boolean variable, and then with the help of the static Boolean variable, we can able to identify whether the record is already updated or not. If it is updated, then don't come back again. Once the record has been updated over here, then stop, come back over. Don't go with the recursive process. If you don't go with that recursive process, for that reason, we are going to be using this static Boolean variables. Through this static Boolean variable, we can able to achieve this. We can able to avoid this recursive trigger problem. If anybody asks from every point of view, so now what is the trigger? What is the recursive trigger problem? Then you can explain this is the problem. In our project, we got the requirement like this. So where we are going to be synchronizing the data between these objects. So at that time here, we got the recursive trigger problem. So to avoid that, we have used static Boolean variables. Through static Boolean variables, or by adding some proper conditions, we can avoid this kind of recursive trigger problems inside your Salesforce instance. Now, the next best practice is that already you know that. As a best practice, it is recommended to maintain only one trigger per an object. Okay, it is recommended to maintain only one trigger per an object. Because that already I told you in the initial classes of trigger itself, don't use the multiple triggers for a single object. Why? Because if I'm having some multiple triggers on the same object with the same event, then which trigger will execute first, which trigger will execute next, we can't decide. There is no such controlling order. There is no such controlling order inside your Salesforce instance to control the execution order of the trigger. Like we can indicate this trigger execute first or this trigger execute next. We can't decide. There is no such options in Salesforce. So that here, don't maintain the multiple triggers on the single object. Better to maintain only one trigger for an object. And then in the trigger, we have to write the business logic in the order which you would like to execute. Whatever the order you want to execute the business logic, in the same order we have to write the code inside the trigger itself. So don't write the multiple triggers on the same object. That is one of the best practice we used to follow. And then the next one is, you know this, in the previous session we have discussed. Upon implementing the code, always don't write the code inside the trigger. Always write the code inside the respective handler classes. That is called as trigger handler factory. Because if I'm writing the code inside the trigger, that code will be executed whenever trigger has been fired. If the similar kind of business logic is required in my Visual Force script, if the similar kind of business logic is required in my integration processes, if the similar kind of business logic is required in my batch class, in my schedule class, at that time, how can we do that? For that one, don't write that code inside the trigger, write that code inside a separate class, and then make the reusability of that class in the multiple places wherever you want, whenever you want. So that always you have to maintain the trigger handler factory, okay, in order to make the triggers as logicless. That means we are implementing the logicless triggers. Logicless triggers means what? Trigger does not have any business logic. Trigger is just having the trigger context variables, and then it will be having that calling the respective method. That's it. Move that code to that respective handler classes, so that when you observe the trigger also, trigger doesn't have anything. This is the trigger piece of code here. Only the context is available. Context variables are available. The whole business logic is available inside my class in the respective methods. So just we have to invoke that method. In this method, write that code, whatever the order you want to execute. So for that reason here, always you have to go implement that logicless triggers. Don't write that code within the trigger. These are the 10 best practices we used to follow upon writing the trigger. It's a common question in every interview. The first best practice is always make the trigger bulkified. We have to implement the trigger bulkified. And then always we have to verify the null pointer exceptions. And then implement the exception handling mechanism by using try and the catch blocks. And then write that multiple events code within the trigger by using the trigger context variables, and then utilize the trigger context variables properly. Like as trigger.new, trigger.old, trigger.new map, trigger.old map. Make the proper utilization of these context variables according to that events. And don't perform any DML operations inside the for loop. Utilize the bulkification process. Don't perform any SOSL and SOQL queries inside that for loop. And then we have to write the proper test classes. We'll see during the test class concept. Avoid the recursive trigger problems by maintaining the proper conditions or by using the static Boolean variables. And then always maintain only one trigger per an object, because we can't write the multiple triggers. Why? Because we can write the multiple triggers also on the same object, but the problem is if I'm writing multiple triggers on the same object with the same events, then we can't decide the execution order of those triggers. So that please write only one trigger per an object, and in that trigger we can write that respective business logics based on those events. And always you have to maintain the trigger handler factory, okay, in order to make the triggers as logicless. So that to reduce that load on the trigger, we have to move that code to that separate classes so that we can make that code reusable. You can make that code reusable whenever you want, wherever you want. These are the 10 best practices we used to follow whenever we are going to use it. The next one is trigger order of execution. So what is the order of execution over here? Now, so when coming to the Salesforce, we have so many automated processes are available. So many automated processes are available in Salesforce. Like we have validations are there, we have triggers are there, we have workflows are there, process builders are there, and then validation rules are available, formulas are available, roll-up summary fields are available, sharing rules are available, assignment rules are available. Like there's so many automated processes are available. In which order these automated processes will be getting executed? In which order these automated processes will be getting executed? On a single object, I'm having some validation rules are there, I'm having some system validations are there, custom validation rules are there. On that same account object, I'm having some formulas are also there. On the same account object, I'm having some roll-up summaries there. I'm having a trigger is there. I'm having a workflow is there. I'm having a process builder is there. I'm having a sharing rule is there. Then in which order it will be executed? on a single object, for example, on an account object, I have few ready-made validation rules. Nothing but some fields are mandatory by using required checkbox. Some validations I have created. Some formula fields are available. Some workflows are available. Some roll-up summary fields are available. Some process builders are available. Some triggers are available. Some sharing rules are available here. Then in which order these are executing? Whenever I'm inserting the record, in which order it will be executing first? Whenever I'm updating the record, in which order it will execute? Will trigger will execute first? Validation will execute first? Workflow will first? Process builder first? Sharing rule first? Then in which order it will execute? What is the order of this execution? Whatever the out of the box features. Out of the box features means what? These are the ready-made features which can be possible through configuration. What are the automated processes we have created? So now those automated processes will be executing in which order? Now let's see the order of execution. Let's see the order of execution. So now here in this, I have segregated to that three areas. One is Salesforce server, nothing but which is preparing embedded Salesforce server itself. And this is my trigger. This is my out of the box features, nothing but which can be configurable, like as validations, workflows, and then we are having that features like process builders, sharing rules, formulas, roll-up summary. These are all which will be configurable features. So those are nothing but automated features, nothing but out of the box features, over TB features, over TB automation and rules. And then triggers, which we are implementing through programming. And Salesforce server, nothing but Salesforce is maintained by its own. We are not creating, Salesforce will take care of. Something is implementing by Salesforce, something we are creating. But at that time, something we are creating through configuration, something we are creating with the help of triggers. Then in this case, which will be executing first, which will execute next. Now, let's see in this case. This is the order of execution in Salesforce. Now, so in this case, after entering some data inside a record, whenever you are creating a record or whenever you are updating the record, so whatever. Okay. Whenever you are creating a record or updating the record, then after entering the data, we have to click on save button. We have to click on save button. Like for example, let me log in into my Salesforce instance. Suppose, for example, when you go to my account object over here, click on new button. I have entered some data to create a new record. Click on save button. Upon click on save button, what will happen? Next, sometimes I'm updating that record. Open this existing record. Click on edit button. Do the required modification. Again, save button is saved. Then in this case, what will happen? Now, upon click on that save button, what will happen? Now let's see. In this case, as soon as once you click on this save a record, upon click on that save record, it will load the original record over here. It will load the original record. Now, in this case, what happened? Loading the original record is available. That means what are the new values you have entered? Suppose, for example, if you are updating the record, then what will happen? Upon updating the records, it will be collecting the record data from the database. It will collect the actual record data from the database. Now that is nothing but it will be collecting, loads new record from the database or overrides old values. That means here it is going to be collecting that actual record from the database. It is going to be assigning the values for that particular fields which you have assigned right now. Now, in this case, what will happen here? Now, in this case, it is going to be executing the. In this case, it is collecting the data from the user interface. It is going to be requesting for that values over the page layouts and all these things. Now, so now here in this case, it will collect all the required values from that page layout. It is verifying for the field level security. That means whether this user is having the access on this respective fields or not. And then, so whether it is verifying that valid field formats are available or not, maximum field length is acceptable or not, it is indicating. and then immediately it is going to be executing that before triggers first. Always before trigger will be executing first. Once the before trigger has been executed, then immediately it is going to be executing the system validations. System validation means what? It is validating that whether the fields are having the values or not. Nothing but I have made some fields are required by selecting the required checkbox. Okay, I have made some fields are required by using required checkbox. So it will verify that information. Because those validations are called as system validation. Salesforce is going to preparing the validation by itself. Now, it will be executing the system validation rules first. That means what? Upon saving the record, first of all, before triggers will be getting executed, and then it is executing the system validation rules. Once the system validation rules are executed, then it is going to be executing your custom validation rules. What are the validation rules that you have created by your own? Those custom validation rules will be getting executed. After that, it is going to be executing if there is any duplicate rules given by Salesforce. If Salesforce has given any duplication rules, those duplicate rules will be getting executed. And then you check the duplication. After that, it is going to be saving that record into your database without committing. Nothing but transaction is not yet committed. Each and every DML statement will be maintaining its own transaction. So upon click on save button, first of all, it is maintaining a transaction. Under the control of this transaction, it is executing all these processes. So the record will be saving into the database without committing. Nothing but transaction is not yet committed. So now, once a record has been saved, it is going to be executing the after triggers. Okay, after triggers. After triggers will be getting executed, like as after insert, after update, after delete, like that. These triggers will be getting executed. Once the after trigger has been getting executed, immediately it will be executing the assignment rules. It will execute the assignment rules. Whatever the assignment rules are available on this particular record, these assignment rules will be getting executed. Once the assignment rules have been getting executed, it will assign the record to the respective user at the queue. So once the user has been assigned a record, then it is going to be sending an auto response notification. Okay, auto response notification will be sending to the user over here. And once the record has been assigned to the user, then it will be executing the workflow rule. The workflow will be getting filed. In this workflow rule, if there is any field updates are available, that field will be getting updated over here. Okay, the field will be getting updated. If there is any field updates are available over here. Now the field will be getting updated. Then if the field has been updated, then again it is going to be executing the before update trigger and then after update trigger. Nothing but before triggers will be executing, after trigger will be getting executed once. And then it is executing the process builder. That means what? Workflows will be executing and then process builder will be getting executed over. Suppose if the fields are not updated, there is no field updates are available. Simply we are having email, email notifications, email alerts are available. At that time, directly it is going to be executing the process builders. Once the process builder has been getting executed, then it will execute that escalation rules. Once the escalation rules have been getting executed, that means it is going to be making the record to be escalating to the respective users, and then it is going to be preparing the entitlement rules. And then roll-up summary functionality will be getting executed. And the criteria-based sharing rules will be getting filed. And it is going to be committing that in DML operation to the database. And then after that, saving that, after performing that operation, if there is any operations are there, it will execute the post DML operations. This is the order the out-of-the-box features will be executing internally. First of all, it is executing the before triggers, and then system validation rules, and then custom validation rules, and then duplicate rules. And then it is saving the record into the database without committing the changes back to the database. And then it will execute the after triggers, and then assignment rules, auto response rules, workflow rules. And then if there is any field updates are available, then it is executing the before update trigger, after update trigger in this case. And then it is executing the process builders. Once the process builder has been executed, it is executing the escalation rules, entitlement rules, and then it will execute the roll-up summary. And after that, it will be executing the criteria-based sharing rules, and then it will be committing the changes back to the database. And after that, it will be having the post-execution logics also, like as email notifications and all these things. So this is the order of execution as part of your automated processes, which has been given by Salesforce. Just remember these points over here. So this is not important. Nobody will ask you to explain everything. Just they will ask the question. So now on my object, I'm having a workflow and a trigger and a validation, which will execute first. So always before trigger will execute first, and then validations, and then workflows, and then process will do so. So these 3 points are important. Remaining are not required. Nobody will ask you to explain this entire process over here. Now, so this is the trigger order of execution that we used to follow when coming to the Salesforce instance. These are the various features are available as part of your triggers. This is the triggers concept. With this one, we are done with the triggers feature. So in triggers, each and every point is very, very important. Don't miss even a single point also. They will raise the questions. The questions will be difference between workflow and the trigger. It's a common question. Sometimes they will raise a question, difference between workflow, process builder, and the trigger. It's a common question. Sometimes they will give you one small scenario, they will explain you, they will give you that information. Now, which functionality you would like to choose, either workflow or process builder or trigger. Why? Why you are choosing that here? Why you are not using the remaining 2? They will ask you the justification over there. Then you should be able to explain. And after that, sometimes they will ask you to write the trigger syntax. Trigger syntax is very, very important. Sometimes they will give you one small requirement, they will ask you to write the trigger code. Now, after the trigger events are very, very important. Then they will raise the question in which event, which kind of operation you would like to perform. And then trigger context variables. They will ask you to explain the trigger context variables as part of your implementation. They will ask you to explain the trigger context variables. So what are the various trigger context variables are available in Salesforce? And then what is the functionality of each and every trigger context variable? That is a common question. And especially they will raise the question trigger difference between trigger.old and the trigger.new. Trigger.old map and trigger.new map. Okay. These are few common questions over here. And the next one. The next one is they will raise that question. They are going to be raising that question, trigger bulkification. Look at trigger bulkification, it's a common question. And then after that, they are going to be raising that questions over here. Like the trigger handler factory. What exactly the trigger handler factory? And then they will raise one more common question. So like the trigger order of executions, and then trigger best practices. Okay, trigger best practices. These are few common questions which they will raise in the entry point. So that don't neglect any point inside the trigger. Each and every point is very, very important. So don't miss this triggers topic. Triggers and then asynchronous programming. These two are the base. And then Visualforce. In Visualforce, we're having some specific points are there. The features are available which are important in Visualforce. Entire Visualforce is not important. But in Visualforce, we are having some few features are there. Those are important here. But in asynchronous programming and the trigger, don't skip any of the point here. Every point is important. Every topic is important as part of implementations. So this is the concept of triggers as part of your Salesforce instance. And I'm giving one small assignment to you over here. I'm giving a small assignment. For example, assume that I have 2 objects. Assume that I have 2 objects. I'm having this 2 objects. account object and the case object. Two objects are available. This is the account object. This is the case object. Two objects are available. You know these two objects. Now, these two are standard. Now tell me, do we have any relation between these two objects? Yes, there is a relation. So what is that relation? Look up. Between this account object and the case object, there is a lookup relationship is available. There is a lookup relationship where this account is the parent object. Account is the parent object and the case is a child. Case is a child. These are the two objects available. These two are the standard objects which has been given the Salesforce as part of Salesforce CRM. And then in between these two objects, we are having some relation from case to account. So now tell me, for one case, for one account, how many cases we can have? Multiple. That means a customer can raise multiple cases also. For example, I am one of the customer. Today, I'm facing some problem with my laptop. So I will raise a complaint to the customer care. Boss, today I'm facing this so-and-so problem with your laptop, which I have purchased since almost 6 months back, or 1 year back, 2 years back, whatever, anything. I may be in the warranty period, I may not be in the warranty period. No problem. If I'm in the warranty period, they will provide the free service. If I'm not in the warranty period, if my warranty period is already over, then they will be doing that, they'll providing the chargeable service. Now, I'm ready to bear the chargeable service. So in this case, what happened? Now they're always providing the service to you. Even though you may be in the warranty period or not, they will provide the service to you. So in this case, customer can able to raise the multiple cases also. Now, in this case, my requirement is here, I would like to have a field inside my account object. I would like to have a field. I would like to have one additional field. In this field, I would like to indicate how many number of cases are available here for each and every account. For each and every account record, how many number of cases are available? I want to know. Number of cases. Here I would like to indicate the cases count. I want the count of this case records. For each and every account record, how many cases are available? I want that count. Then what we can do generally in this case? Generally, for this kind of functionality, for this parent, these many childs are there. For this parent, these many child. For this parent, these many childs. How can we do this count? What we can do?
We'll use by using roll-up summary.
By using roll-up summary. Now tell me in this case what we can do. Can we create a roll-up summary in this case?
No, sir. No. We don't
No.
have master detail.
Can we create roll-up summary on this account object by using case as a child?
No.
It
No.
require a master detail relationship.
Right. Then what we can do in this case? I want roll-up summary functionality over here. I want the count of cases. What we can do?
We can fire it. We can make a trigger and make its functionality look like master detail.
Okay. Then what needs to be done? In this case here, I would like to prepare one trigger because here I can't change this association from lookup to master detail because it is the standard relationship field given by Salesforce. So we can't make it as the master detail. We can't change this association. There is a problem in this case. So in this case, what we can do? Now here I will be giving one small suggestion to you. Can I create one additional master detail relationship field between these two? Can I create one master detail field?
No, sir.
Why?
Because in master detail relationship, standard object cannot be a child object.
Right, correct. In this case here, now we can't create one really additional relationship also between these two. Why? Because is to create that OLAP summary functionality, we need the master detail association. But between these standard objects, I can't create master detail association. Why? Because is in master detail association, so now we can't make a standard object as child. Standard object should be always on top. That should be parent. That should not be child. But in this case, what I need to do, if I'm creating a master detail association between these two, okay, if I'm creating a master detail association between these two, then we have to make the account as parent and the case as child. But in this case is a standard object. So standard object cannot be a child in master detail. That's the problem. So in this case, what we can do, in this case, we are having only one solution. In this case, we are having only one solution. Third, we need to create a trigger. Okay, we need to create a trigger. Now tell me where we can create this trigger over.
In case object.
Okay, now in case object or account object?
Case object.
Case object we have to create, sir. Because whenever the case is getting inserted or updated, based on that, we have to update the value.
Right. In this case, what happened? Now this count value is coming from where? Because of the child. So that here, whenever we are performing some operations on this a child object here. So that means here I would like to create one trigger. So this is the trigger I would like to prepare on my case object. We have to create a trigger on the case object. So this is the trigger I would like to prepare. I need to prepare one trigger on this case object. Now whenever I'm going to be creating a new record, now tell me here this trigger should be fired on what events?
Before insert, after insert, after update, and after delete, after and delete, we have to create for 4 conditions.
Right, because whenever I'm going to be creating a new record, that means once a new case record has been added, then what I need to do, I need to update this value as 1, nothing but count record 1. So that here, once a case record has been created successfully, I need to update this roll-up summary field value as 1. For that one, I would like to find this a trigger and after insert event. I need to execute on after insert. Now, suppose, for example, I have updated one existing record here. Okay, I have updated one existing record. Now, in this case, previously that case is not associated to any account. Now I have opened that case record. I have assigned that case record to an account. That means that count value we have to update. So that here, after update event, so once the record has been updated, then also I need to update that after update. Suppose, for example, there is an account record, account 1. For this one, 2 cases are available. 2 cases are available. From these 2 cases, 1 case I have removed. Then what I need to do, that number of cases I want to make it as 1, because previously 2 case records are there, but 1 record we have it removed, so 1 case is available. So I need to file on after repeat also. And then I have restored that record back to the actual object again. I have restored that record back to the actual object again. In this case, what needs to be done? Once a record has been restored, then again I need to update that information. Then again I need to update this information. For that one, I am going to be indicating that after undo. So now I would like to prepare one trigger on my case object, which should be get fired on after insert, after update, after delete, and after delete. So these are the 4 events on which my trigger has to be get fired. Once the trigger has been fired, it has to update the field values inside this. Whatever the values available inside this field is the field value it has to update. With the help of this trigger, this count value we need to update. This is the way. So now this is the requirement I'm providing. So now create a trigger on the case object to update the number of case records available for each and every account inside my account object. In this case, here create one additional field in the account object. Create one field, which is of type numerical. create a number field inside my account object, which is used to indicate how many number of cases are available for each and every account. I want that count. This is my requirement. So this is a common question in the entry pineapple they will raise. I want one additional roll-up summary field. Then what we can do at that time here, between these two objects, there is a lookup, so which is not possible to add the master detail, so that we are implementing through triggers. They will raise a question. Through workflow, we can do this one? No. Of course, workflow will fire after insert, after update, but after delete, workflow will not fire. After undelete, workflow will not fire. Can I go with that process builder? No. Process builder also firing on after insert, after update. But remaining two events, nothing. So now in this case, what needs to be done? For that one, always we have to go with that trigger. So I would like to prepare one trigger on the case object, which will be firing on after insert, after update, after delete, and after undo. And then based on these events, we need to update that count value inside my account records count field. Now this is the functionality, the requirement. I'm giving this as an implement the roll-up summary functionality. Roll-up summary functionality between account and case object. Between account and case object. Now I'm indicating the steps. Create a trigger on case object and then add the events. It has to fire on after insert, after update, after delete. These are the 4 events. In this case, here I'm indicating that a prerequisite thing. Create a number with data type field in account object. Store the number of related cases available for each account. Try this functionality with all the 4 events available. Try this functionality. Okay. And the next session we'll see some more features. Like our next concept we'll be discussing about that Apex sharing mechanism. How can we share the records through programming? Because as part of your admin concept already, I have given the information about that sharing mechanism. I have discussed about the concept of sharing mechanism. During this sharing mechanism, already I have given the information. Like whenever you are sharing the records, we have 3 ways are available: manual sharing, automated sharing, Apex sharing. Manual sharing we are doing with the help of sharing button. Automated sharing we are doing with the help of sharing groups. And then Apex sharing here. How to share the record dynamically. Now we'll see. Okay, we'll see this concept in next session over here. How can we do it? Here, I would like to show this concept with the help of 2 mechanisms. One is through triggers. Second one is through process builder also. How to do that, I will show you. How to invoke a class from process builder, I will show you by using a feature called as invocable methods. So there is a feature called as invocable methods. How to invoke a method or how to invoke a class from process builder also. We'll see practically over there. Now, how to implement this functionality we'll see in the next session. Next development session will be on Monday. Okay, next development session will be on Monday. Tomorrow and after tomorrow we are having the concept of integration. So integration will be morning at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock we have the integration. Tomorrow morning we have the integration class morning at 8 o'clock. 8 to 10:30 or 10:30 will be having the session. Tomorrow and Saturday, Sunday, both the days, same timings. 8 to 10:30, 8 to 10:30 will be having the integration sessions. So regarding that integration, you will be getting a new meeting link by today evening. Okay. By today evening, you will be getting the new meeting link for the integration sessions. So that you can able to access that meeting link, you can able to join that meeting also.
Firoz, how many sessions would be there for integration?
Integration, you will be having the 6 weekends. Okay.
Okay.
6 weekends, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sundays.
Okay.